Film Club.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Film Club. I'm one of your hosts, Andy Harrison, and with me, as always, it's Andy Donaldson.
Hello.
Every week in Film Club, we invite you along to watch a film with us, but this week, Chip is inviting us to watch Saw.
Thanks, Chip. Thank you very much. Saw is a gory film. Saw is one that spanned out a massive franchise, but actually came from a short film itself. It stars two people, and they're stuck in a room, and they kind of decipher how they got there and what they have to do to get rid of, because they're attached to, legs are attached to a wall. It's kind of like a puzzle on how they get out, mixed with an awful lot of gory traps.
Saw is directed by James Wan, who people today probably know more from stuff like The Fast and the Furious, as well as Aquaman. But Saw was James Wan's directorial debut. It was sort of the film that he and one of the people that he attended film school with were desperate to get off the ground. The two of them obviously lived over in Australia, had this interesting idea for a film. The idea of putting two people into a bathroom and just having the majority of the film play out in a single room was, it's sort of classic film students trying to challenge themselves and be creative with a very, very limited budget and limited scope. It was that idea that sort of would eventually develop into Saw over a couple of years of trying to find funding, having a lot of sort of getting turned down, small successes here or there, eventually moving to LA and finding the funding to go ahead and make this.
Do you think what's come to done with the rest of the franchise, from a financial perspective, it's done really well? It might not be hugely acclaimed in the critical kind of front. Personally, can't say I'm a fan at all. Like, it's not my cup of tea, but I can respect what it's come to be.
I really want to like Saw more than I do, I think, because Saw has a lot of that indie spirit about it. It's people who are working with very little money. It's their first foray into the industry. They're building their careers as they go. They're doing very, very clever things to try and impress people who are otherwise, sort of blowing lots of millions of dollars unnecessarily. And in lots of ways, you're totally right, it succeeds. And in that respect, thank you, Chip, for recommending this, because, you and I have seen Saw before, right? Do you remember watching it? We watched it when we were kids. I remember it was 2004. We were about 14, 15 at the time. And we were sort of excited because there was this like scary new film that pushed new boundaries. And that's what Saw was doing at the time. It was pushing new boundaries in that it was sort of bringing back the splatter film, or like what today is more commonly referred to as like a torture porn, right? Horror that is sort of obsessed with the idea that the human body and the deformation and the mutilation of the human body is grotesque, and the camera sort of lingers on that. That was what Saw was marketed as. Interestingly, I don't think that's what Saw, the first one, actually is. I think it's a lot more like a thriller.
Yes, a thriller, and quite like a suspense, a detective kind of film. Because not only is Detective Tapp trying to, I know Detective Tapp from the game Dead by Daylight. It's weird that I know that, but it's the only name I know out with this film. He's played by
Danny Glover.
Danny Glover, yeah. So he's the one actor I recognise in this film. Not only is he trying to decipher what's going on, but also the main characters, the two, Adam and I can't remember his other name. I think Lawrence. I looked there. They're trying to recognise what's going on. Oh, I remember this happened, that happened. I thought it was me. So there is some kind of story in the background, and there is some kind of guessing work to go on. But otherwise, 100% it's a thriller. Look at the family scene where he's waving the gun in the face, and then you find out the reason why he's waving the gun in the face. Then you find out you don't actually know who Jigsaw is.
It's a mystery. It's a puzzle box, and it takes the audience along that mystery. I love, actually, one of my favourite things about this film, and something I think that totally holds up, is the opening of this film. That sort of, you're thrown into the opening. You literally wake up just like Adam wakes up in that bath, in that room, and you're sort of figuring stuff out as you go. It's a really fun and really engaging way of entering into the film. And a lot of what this film is sort of interested in is figuring out that mystery. It's not that interested in showing you the blood and the gore. It's definitely there. It's more implicit than it is just directly shown.
Yeah.
Which the later films would unfortunately sort of flip the script on. The films after this definitely start to lean into being more about showing the violence and showing the horror than it is about like unfolding any sort of mystery.
And just for clarification, James Wan didn't go on to direct the other Saw films. I think he served as a producer, but he did do Insidious and he did do The Conjuring. I saw Insidious, which was good, terrifyingly good. I'm not good with scary films, but I enjoyed that in terms of scary films. But I heard good reviews of The Conjuring as well. So he's gone on to do like kind of other horror films. Aquaman, I mean, we have our feelings about that really. But my point is, he didn't like kind of. I don't know how much he pushed that into being more torture porn than being kind of implicit. So yeah, it is one thing I prefer Saw, and like it's a different film to the rest of them.
One of the things that lets this down for me, and something that I'd completely had forgotten since last watching this, there's some dodgy performances in this film.
Oh God, right, okay. Can I just explain one? I know it sounds bad, but the kid, we've gone about like child actors, and we've been like kind of like complimenting quite a lot. God, that was just, mommy help me. I was just like, right, seriously, come on. Like that just did my head in that bat. Yeah, oh yeah.
The doctor, Lawrence, I think he's also awkward, which means that the perfect combination of the awkward child actor and him being slightly awkward, where he goes to like say goodnight to her. Oh, it's God, a really awkward, uncomfortable scene. I don't know why it's in the film.
It expands out too long, but it's his first film. I'll give James Wan that kind of little bit of leeway there. The other factor I didn't like about it, I agree that with the things, but is the some might like it, but the kind of chaos cinema, when you go into a trap and then it spins round and it's all these kind of flashing effects and it's just sound for the sake of sound to try and raise your kind of hairs in your back. I'm not a fan of that. I don't think it's good filmmaking personally.
It's a very in-your-face stylistic choice. I understand why people enjoy that. In a similar sense, I think this is a very ugly film to look at. And I don't mean ugly in a complimentary sense, because that can be a very good thing to have when you're talking about a horror or a gore-focused film. There are some wonderfully ugly films out there. This instead feels a bit flat, and it feels kind of cheap, and it feels quite dull a lot of the time. You know what? It strikes me actually as looking like a TV show.
It's not my cup of tea, so I don't have too many things to say about it, apart from it's good to see what James Wan's done from it.
Saw as a series goes on to become a little bit too gore focused and a little bit too horror focused for me.
Shit story focused.
And the storytelling becomes very peculiar. Weirdly, it's actually become quite influential in lots of ways. The ways in which minor characters spin off to become major players in later films, a serialized type of storytelling that we now see in Marvel films today. A lot of that's actually taken from Saw. So it is strange to see how this franchise has grown over time. One thing we do have to mention before wrapping this up, Saw did have one of the most incredible endings for its time. I remember 2004 when you've watched this film and you think it's all wrapping up nicely, and the moment that tape recorder gets pulled out and suddenly you start hearing the additional tape, and then Tobin Bell Jigsaw gets up off the ground. I remember everyone who saw that immediately turning around to somebody and being like, oh my God, have you seen Saw? Because of that ending. It's a very, very clever ending, because I think it's one of the highlights of the film.
I'm very glad that you spoiled it for me when I was 14. So when I went into Saw, I knew what happened. So that's probably why it doesn't resonate with me as much as it does you.
Did I really?
Yep.
That's incredible.
No, it's a dick move. But anyway, we digress.
I'm quite proud of that. So there is Saw. Please let us know. Do you know what I might have just done? I might have just ruined it for like another however many dozens of people out there who have watched this video.
No. If you're watching a review, you're going to get spoilers. Like, it happens.
So thank you for joining us for Saw, and thank you, Chip, for recommending Saw. Although it's not necessarily our cup of tea, it was fun sort of revisiting this franchise at its roots, which I still think this is the best Saw film of the lot.
Yeah.
So Andy and I will be back once again next week, where we're going to take a look at a David Fincher classic in 7. So until then, get watching.